Hoosiers obviously aren't in the college football playoff, but that doesn't mean we can't have some reactions to its release on Tuesday. Certainly a lot of Big Ten teams, a lot of IU opponents in those rankings. We're going to talk that. We're also going to look at some more storylines for IU basketball that we did not get to in Tuesday's episode. So plenty of fun to talk about today.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, guys. It is Wednesday, November 3rd. This, as always, is Locked On Hoosiers, your daily source for IU athletics and news. This episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. Big thanks to McDonald's, our friends over there, for always being there. I'm loving it. I'm your host, as always, Jacob Rude, and I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, as including YouTube. Just search Locked On Hoosiers. As I mentioned, some more basketball talk today as I look at some storylines Jared and I did not get into in Tuesday's longer episode. Going to try to keep things shorter for you today. But we're going to lead off with some reactions to the college football playoff. Before that, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Hoosiers. Follow us on Instagram at Locked On Hoosiers. College football playoff came out. Their first rankings came out on Tuesday. Not shocking, but there were certainly some questionable rankings, as there always is with the committee. I don't know how many times this needs to happen before we realize that the way this current system is not working. Georgia opens as number one. That part's not surprising. Bama at number 2, Michigan State at number 3, Oregon at number 4, Ohio State 5, Cincinnati 6. We're certainly going to talk about Cincinnati, who, if I was a Cincinnati fan, I'd be absolutely livid today. But a lot of Big Ten teams in this poll. We just mentioned 2 of them, Michigan State at 3, Ohio State at 5. You also have Michigan, IU's opponent this weekend, at number 7, Minnesota at number 20, Wisconsin at number 21, Iowa at number 22. 3 Big Ten teams in a row there towards the bottom of the rankings. Penn State, what a fall they have had since Sean Clifford's injury in that Iowa game. Just an absolute free fall for the Nittany Lions. But yeah, the first thing that I would have to note from these rankings, how in the world is Cincinnati ranked number 6? That is a really good Cincinnati team, an unbeaten Cincinnati team. They hold a win over number 10 Notre Dame. Notre Dame's only lost this season at Notre Dame. The IU win probably doesn't hold as much esteem as it did earlier in the season. But it's still probably their second best win right now, considering their conference. That was still a decent version of the IU team that played them. So interesting to see them ranked at number 6. Interesting is the harshest word I can use on this. Honestly, they should be above Ohio State. I think Cincinnati's resume is stronger, basically because they haven't lost. They should be ahead of Alabama. Not crazy about Alabama this year, although they're always going to be really high in the poll. Possibly should be ahead of Oregon. Oregon has that win over Ohio State. I guess they value a win at Ohio State a little bit more than a win at Notre Dame, and Oregon playing obviously a tougher schedule in the Pac-12 than Cincinnati. But Cincinnati deserves to be in this top 4. If Cincinnati doesn't make it, then a group of 5 team is never going to make it. Like it's as simple as that. The system isn't fair if Cincinnati isn't making it, assuming they finish undefeated, which I really hope they do. I would really love to see Cincinnati, Desmond Ridder, those guys in the playoff. I think I would speak for a lot of IU fans saying I would root for them. Desmond Ridder is a lot of fun. So they still have a path to just make it to the top four spots just by winning out. You're going to have an Ohio State, Michigan State game that will knock one of those teams below them. And you should have a Bama, Georgia game that would potentially knock one of those teams below them, especially if Georgia beats Bama again. No chance they're keeping a 2-loss Bama over an undefeated Cincinnati. At least I say that now. Some other things. Ohio State should probably be higher, but it's hard to put them over Oregon, who beat them, and over Michigan State, who is undefeated. I just think in general, Alabama is a little too high right now, but as it goes with the SEC, kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Miami and Florida wins that Alabama have don't look nearly as good. So I'm not crazy about Bama this year, but Ohio State, we just saw them absolutely destroy the Hoosiers. I think that's the best team in the Big Ten. We'll find out soon enough as they have both Michigan State and Michigan waiting for them. Oklahoma should not be higher. They at number 8. Listen, Oklahoma's undefeated, but I have absolutely no idea how. The how is because the Big 12, Big whatever they're down to, Big 8 at this point is not good. But I don't know if you can be a bad 9-0 team, but I really don't think Oklahoma is that good. They have a long, long way though to get into the playoffs. So ultimately, I don't think that matters. My last thing is, why is Minnesota in this? What an odd surprise. Minnesota coming in at number 20. Looking at their schedule, I'm not even sure I could tell you what their best win is right now. Their best performance is a 14-point loss to Ohio State right now. Because outside of that, they haven't done hardly anything. And they haven't played anybody. They've beaten Nebraska. They've beaten Purdue. They've beaten Maryland. They've beaten Northwestern. They'll have Illinois this upcoming week. Iowa will be a chance. Wisconsin will be a chance to get some wins. I would assume that's I wouldn't even assume Minnesota or Wisconsin or Iowa, any of them could make the Big Ten title game. I was just really, really surprised to see Minnesota there. I didn't even consider them a possibility. The Hoosiers will see them in a couple weeks, throw them up into the top 10. Let's just add another top 10 matchup in there. But just thought I'd share some reactions to the college football playoff, kind of how they relate maybe to IU. A lot of names that the Hoosiers have seen this season in those rankings. And a lot of teams that IU has lost to in those rankings this season. So unfortunately, the Hoosiers will not be in those rankings this season. We won't get the chance to yell at the playoff committee this season for never showing us the respect we deserved. So we'll talk more football later in the week. Just wanted to throw that in there. We're going to look at some storylines, though, for the IU basketball season, which is, as I record this, officially a week away. Next Tuesday, the season will kick off. Wanted to look at some things. I had a much longer list of things for Jared and I to talk about on Tuesday's show, and naturally we went really long as is. So I just kind of pushed things back to today's episode. Before we talk about that, though, just because the IU football season feels like it's over doesn't mean that you can't continue playing PrizePicks, which is the leader in college sports daily fantasy. These guys offer more props than anyone in the world. They have all of your Power 5 teams covered, all of your mid-majors that you probably haven't even heard about. It's really simple. Pick 2 to 5 players. Pick one of their props, whether it's yards, touchdowns, receptions, rushes, interceptions thrown. So many to choose from. Pick over or under on those and win up to 10 times your entry. Users that deposit and use promo code Locked On will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. They want to give you some free money. Go look on the website to see some IU Michigan props later in the week. See what they have to offer there. Don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com. Use promo code Locked On or go to your app store. Download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. We also mentioned at the top of the show that we're sponsored by McDonald's today. Proudly serving community since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get delicious, tasty, affordable food. It's a place where people, friends, family can come and reconnect. It's a place where classmates can meet up for a study group. Can't tell you how many times I've relied on McDonald's Wi-Fi to get work done. Win or lose, it's a place teammates, competitors, a home team, or the away team can come to recharge. It's the place you always look forward to stopping at on a long road trip to get to rest your legs and to refuel. Head to your local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. I know it is my go-to spot for a late night fourth meal right down the road. Pick up a McChicken and some fries. So big thanks to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. What else I'm loving is that the Hoosiers basketball season is just around the corner. Again, though, thanks for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. We're going to talk about the basketball team here in just a minute. And when we're done, make sure your second listen is over at Locked On Titans, where, for those that didn't see it over the weekend, Nick Westbrook Akine, I believe is his last name now, scored a touchdown for the Titans in their win over the Colts. Head on over there, listen to their kind of recap of the game. Hear them shout out Nick Westbrook. Some good guys over there at Locked On Titans. Let's talk basketball, though. If you missed Tuesday's episode, Jared and I talked about some major storylines from Trayce Jackson-Davis to how good Mike Woodson is to what the offense is going to look like. I think those are kind of three of the biggest questions about IU basketball heading into this season. I had a lot more I wanted to talk about, though, and I looked up some others to try to fill out the rest of the podcast today. One of the biggest things I'm interested in seeing is just seeing Tamar Bates on the court. He's kind of been an under-the-radar five-star recruit. Just the nature of how quickly it all happened and the timing of it. It happens in the spring when Shaka Smart leaves. He decommits, and then the timing of it all led to him committing to the Hoosiers. Jared and I were talking before Tuesday's episode, just looking at all-time recruits. Tamar Bates is one of the highest-rated recruits we've ever had. He actually ranks just ahead of Trayce Jackson-Davis. He is way up there as a five-star guy, and I'm just excited to see him get on the court. He played in the Bahamas. I'm going to reference that Bahamas trip because that's kind of the only sample size we have for a lot of this Hoosier team. He played in the Bahamas. He looked every bit a five-star recruit, can handle the ball, can score at multiple levels, will bring a much-needed kind of scoring punch to that two-guard position as a combo guard. Think there's a pretty good chance, I've mentioned it a couple times, that he could be in the starting lineup at points during the season, if not by the end of the season. The Hoosiers have a lot of guards available in that to start at point guard and shooting guard, and he is one of the top ones, I think. So I'm just excited to see him get on the floor just as a five-star recruit, as a top guy coming in, kind of being a complement to Trayce Jackson-Davis, a scoring guard that we haven't always had in the Archie Miller era. I know we had Romeo, but I think he was a bit of a disappointment. I don't think I'm going on a limb saying that one. So just having kind of a dynamic, explosive scoring guard, excited to see. Another guy I'm really excited to see, if we're talking about recruiting rankings, is Christian Lander, who's actually ranked just above Tamar Bates, a guy who came in with a lot of promise, but kind of a microcosm of the Archie Miller era, hasn't really fulfilled it. It was discouraging in some regards to see him in a walking boot during Hoosier hysteria. I really am excited to see him play. I hope that was just kind of a short-term thing. We obviously don't know a lot about his availability next week. We know that in that secret scrimmage we talked about, there was a report that 2 people did not play, but it's anybody's guess who did not play. There was a handful of guys who were dealing with injuries. That is why they didn't even have a scrimmage at Hoosier Hysteria. They didn't have enough bodies for it. So I'm excited to see Christian Lander and where he falls in this point guard rotation. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk. I think Xavier Johnson is locked on starting. Robert Finney is going to be a very key piece to this team. Not sure he's going to start, but I would expect him to be the sixth man. So where does Christian Lander fall in that? I think he's going to be trusted to get minutes. It sounds like it was kind of a down and then up preseason or summer for him. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table, see if he can start to fulfill some of that potential. Last player I want to talk about is Parker Stewart. Probably not a coincidence that all these guys are guards, and that's going to lead to a point in the last segment. But Parker Stewart's kind of the forgotten member of this backcourt. I mean, you can just – I've talked about just about every guard on the roster, and Parker Stewart's the last one. He was obviously with the team last year, was redshirting as a transfer. He was the starter in the Bahamas. I mentioned Tamar Bates possibly moving into the starting lineup. Parker Stewart was the guy that started, and he started because he can provide spacing. And the Hoosiers are going to need that with Trace not typically being a guy who steps out and knocks down threes. Finney and Xavier Johnson aren't traditionally knockdown three-point shooters. Neither is Race Thompson. So the Hoosiers need some spacing. That's why Parker Stewart started. And if he can knock down three-pointers, he will probably keep that starting spot. I don't know if it will specifically keep Tamar Bates out of the lineup. Maybe they go with a three-guard look. But so long as he can knock down shots, he's going to have a spot in this rotation and most likely in this starting lineup. But I'm just interested to see how he complements some of the other guys, if he can knock down open shots. As an IU fan, I beg to see some three-pointers, some fluid offense, and a true outside threat out there on the court at Assembly Hall, wherever they're playing. So Parker Stewart seems like the most likely backcourt guy to provide that. There's any number of other guys we can talk about. We're going to mention some other names here, but those are three guys that I'm really interested in seeing this season. Before we move on into the final segment, let's talk about Built Bar. I told you guys I was excited to get my Built Bar shipment, and I finally did. The blueberry muffin one, that is what this is. Big thumbs up. Really, really good. Tried one out today when I finally got my shipment. If you haven't tried Built Bar, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar. It does not taste like a protein bar. It's not the waxy, chalky, hard to choke down protein bars. It's covered in chocolate. Really big bar. Tastes like a candy bar. You guys will absolutely love it. Absolutely tasty. But not only that, they're low in carbs, low in calories, low in fat, low in sugar, high in protein. They have a ton of flavors you can choose from. I mentioned the blueberry muffin. Have cookies and cream as well. They have coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, salted caramel, double chocolate, cherry barcia, more than I could possibly name. Head on over to built.com today. Use promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We've talked about BetOnline this week, and they remain your number one spot for basketball and football action this season. Head to the new and updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive up to 50% or receive, a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's free money, again, that these guys are trying to give you. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus, whether it's NBA basketball, college basketball starting up, NFL, college football. The World Series just wrapped up, so no longer that, but NHL, UFC, whatever it is, these guys have you covered with amazing offers available all season long. BetOnline's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. For the Hoosiers, one of the big things that is going to be under the microscope this season is that offense, which we talked about yesterday. I can't even come up with the right adjectives to describe it last season. Whatever awful, boring, slow adjective you want to use is how I would describe the Hoosiers last year. I think the biggest thing that they're going to need this season, one individual aspect, is what I just talked about with Parker Stewart. That is 3-point shooting. He's going to be able to provide it. Miller Kopp is going to be a big one that'll be able to provide some shooting. I think they're going to rely on him a lot. He was the 5th starter in the Bahamas. I think they'll rely on him because of his experience in the Big Ten. You have a guy like Michael Durr, who we didn't see in the Bahamas because of injury. He potentially could be one of the guys that didn't play in the scrimmage, but he's able to kind of be a change of pace guy with Trace Jackson-Davis and step out, knock down some threes, provide a bit of a different look for the Hoosiers. You would hope to see some improvements as well from other guys, whether it's Xavier Johnson and Finney, who we've talked about. Finney at times kind of hot and cold with his 3-point shooting. Never hotter than the shot he hit in the Crossroads Classic to win it his freshman season, but will be interesting to see if they have any improvements. Trace Jackson-Davis, there's been some talk about Coach Woodson wanting him to step out and shoot some 3-pointers. So it'll be interesting to see how much he does, if he's willing to do that. If he wants to play at the NBA level, which I know is kind of a different discussion, he's going to need to shoot 3-pointers. So it'll be interesting to see if that's been part of his development over the summer. Kind of going hand in hand with that, though, I'm interested to see kind of a more modern offense. I know we talked a bit about it yesterday, but from the sound of it, it's going to be an offense under Mike Woodson that has more spacing, more movement, kind of a 5-out offense that should be a lot more aesthetically pleasing, if nothing else. More pick and rolls, more just in general movement. That was the biggest thing I always thought in Archie's offense, is that it was really slow developing kind of plays and a scheme. And it led to a lot of times with IU just kind of aimlessly dribbling the ball in the backcourt with like 12 seconds left on the shot clock and having to have somebody bail them out. So I hope there's just more movement. It's a word I keep using, but I just hope there's more of that. It'll look more modern, I think, with the 5-out approach. It sounds like Trace and Race, which is a great front court name combo. Both those guys have the ability to kind of step out. And that'll be why it's important for Trace to knock down 3-pointers this year. But I'm interested to see what the offense looks like in general. The flip side to that is the defense is also going to be interesting. The pack line that Archie wanted to put in, at times it worked. It slowed games down. It kept Hoosiers in a lot of games, but it was their offense that always never seemed like it was enough. But it's going to be a different man-to-man style now with Coach Woodson in there. The talk has been, if you go play defense hard, you get to kind of have fun on the offensive end, which is both exciting to hear for the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. It'd be interesting to see just small things, how much switching there might be in this defense. It's not something that happens a ton in college basketball. It's more of an NBA thing. But if Coach Woodson's running a more modern offense and he has experience in the NBA, when you have a guy like Trace as your 5, it'll be interesting to see if there's more switching perhaps on the defensive side of the ball. Just things like that. Be interesting to see how this team attacks the defensive end. I know they want to be kind of aggressive, in your face, man-to-man defense. It's nice on paper, but it'll be interesting to see how they execute that. Thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow with some more basketball talk and some soccer talk with Tristan Jackson of the IDS, who was on earlier in the season. It'll be interesting to see or hear his thoughts on the soccer team as they get ready for the Big Ten tournament. So we'll be back tomorrow with that. Now, for your second listen today, head on over to the Locked On Big Ten podcast with Nate Dickinson. I'm sure they have a lot more college football playoff reactions. As always, leave a rating and review if you haven't already. Helps us out a ton. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the podcast, all that fun stuff. Most importantly, though, guys, have a great